If you are thinking about moving from California to Bellingham and don't want to regret the trip, there are 5 things you need to know before making the move. And to be honest, this video really applies to anyone living in the Southwest desert states like California, Texas, Arizona. However, I'm just going to be focusing on California because hot damn, you guys are coming here faster than I did on my wedding night.
What? Bro, what are you talking about, man?
The first thing you need to know about Bellingham, Washington is the weather. Unlike Seattle, where the weather is literally always raining, Bellingham is actually really nice. It has a marine climate, so in the winters it's pretty mild, and in the summers are really warm. The average temperature here in the summer is going to be in the mid 70s, mid 80s, and in the winter times it is going to be a little bit colder in the 30s and 40s. Like today, we just celebrated Christmas and it's almost 50 degrees outside. However, last week we had about 6 inches of snow, which is not something we get very often, but it was a lot of fun and a good change of pace. But it's important to note, this is Washington, not California. I know some people think it's too cold here, and I'm sorry, it doesn't feel like Satan's asshole 24/7. And if you've lived most of your life in the desert, it's probably going to feel a little bit chilly here at first. But I promise you, you will acclimate to our weather. In fact, my wife is from California, and it took her about 6 months to get used to the colder weathers here, especially during winter time. And after a year, she fell in love with the weather. Just remember, it's going to be a lot nicer here than it is in Seattle. I don't know why. There's a scientific explanation as to why it's always nicer here in Bellingham area than it is Seattle. All I know is it's going to be a lot sunnier and rain a lot less than it does in Seattle. So just keep that in mind. The second thing you need to know is while yes, the cost of living here is significantly less than it is in, say, California, it's important to know that housing is going to cost more than it does in most states. So if you're thinking about selling your $2 million bungalow in Los Angeles, California, to buy a $500,000 waterfront mansion here in Bellingham, it's probably not going to happen. At the time of making this video, the median home sales price in Bellingham, Washington is about $700,000. And no, home prices are not going down like they are in most of the country. If anything, they're still going up here. So when it comes to finding a home, depending on the amenities you want, like if you want to be close to trails, maybe downtown, want a lot of room, a lot of space, a lot of storage, maybe you want something newer or maybe a little bit more Victorian, you could be looking at homes closer in the $1 million range, depending on what you're looking for, depending on what you want, if you want views, walkability, things like that. However, if you're looking something on the more affordable side, there's some really great properties in the $500,000 to $600,000 range. There's even some new build townhouses you can get for around $500,000, especially if you're willing to consider other areas like Ferndale, Linden, Blaine. These cities are really close to Bellingham and have really awesome communities close by. But at the end of the day, depending on what type of amenities you have to have in a home are really going to dictate the price on whether it is going to be $500,000 or $1 million plus. The third thing you need to know about Bellingham, Washington is that if you do not like the outdoors, you should probably not move here. Most of the best things to do here in Bellingham, Washington are going to be outdoors related. There are literally thousands of hikes, hundreds of mountain biking trails, several lakes to swim in, kayak or sail on, islands to explore, and even Mount Baker for those of us that like to ski and snowboard. Also, most of our public or community events are going to be outdoors as well, whether that's one of our ski to sea races, our dozen plus beer festivals, or community events. Most are just going to be outside. But that said, there's still a ton of events going on inside. It's just that most of the draw to Bellingham is going to be outdoor recreational stuff. This is the great Pacific Northwest. If you don't like being outside, then what are you doing here? The fourth thing you need to know is that I am a Bellingham realtor, and if you want to, you can definitely hire me. I was born and raised in Bellingham, and I know literally everything about this city, except for the things I don't know. I've helped hundreds of families move here, and I've been selling real estate for 7+ years. So if you're thinking about making a move here, click the link below and schedule a consultation with me. I'd love to meet with you. Or feel free to join our newsletter down below and stay up to date on all things Bellingham. The fifth thing you need to know about Bellingham, Washington is that we are completely gridlocked. Now, this isn't a bad thing. It's just something you need to be aware of. Bellingham is literally the tippy top of the United States. And if you pull up a map, you'll see that we have Canada to the north, Mount Baker to the east, and we have the Pacific Ocean to the west, which is really cool and also what makes Bellingham so special and unique. But it also has some implications that you need to know about. Now, some of the cool things about Bellingham is that it's still relatively a small city with a ton of amenities. Location-wise, you could be just about anywhere really quickly. We're about 20 minutes away from the Canadian border and less than an hour away from Vancouver, BC, which is basically just the Seattle of Canada. We're also about 90 minutes away from Seattle, which is a really fun city to visit. Of course, we've already talked about Mount Baker being to the east and how it's a great spot to go skiing, snowboarding, and a great time to go hiking in the summer. And with the Pacific Ocean to the west, we also have a ton of islands you can explore. Honestly, go check out all the San Juan Islands. They're a ton of fun. There's ferries that will take you to all of them. I highly recommend it. Even if you're just visiting here, you should check out those islands. They're a blast. So location-wise, you still have a ton to do. It's really close by while still being in a relatively untouched, beautiful area in the Pacific Northwest. Now, what are some of the unknown implications of this that a lot of people are probably not aware of. First up is we don't have a ton of opportunity to grow. In the short term, we're going to continue to see some growth and new communities being developed, but the fact of the matter is long term, we can't really expand outwards anymore. We have the ocean to the west, we have Canada to the north, and then we have Mount Baker, which is impossible to build on, to the east. And you can really only go so far south before you start hitting neighboring cities. And in the long term, I believe prices are going to continue to increase significantly regardless of whatever the housing market is doing in the entire United States. In fact, at the time of making this video, housing prices are falling literally everywhere in the United States except here in Bellingham. The exception is, sure, there's a few people that have dropped their prices on their house, and that's because they thought the housing market was still in 2021. And now, sure, we are seeing some price cuts for some listings that were initially overpriced, but for the most part, if you look at month-over-month data, home prices keep going up here or they remain level depending on the neighborhood. And I think this has to do with our high desirability to live here because, let's face it, Bellingham is definitely one of the best places on earth to live. And because we're landlocked, we can't really grow and expand like a Seattle or an LA would do, which means prices are just going to keep going up. But all this begs the questions, what are some things that you regret about moving to the city that you're currently in? I'm sure I'm going to get like 20 people commenting on this video who live in Bellingham saying, you forgot about the homeless population and the high crime rates and the Yeah, we've already debunked these things. They're literally non-issues, especially once you start comparing Bellingham to other major cities. You realize these aren't even relevant. You can't name me a city that doesn't have a homeless person in it. And if anything, Bellingham has some fantastic resources for dealing with this stuff. So if you're talking about Bellingham, comment something different. Now, with that said, my name's Thomas Mutchler, your favorite realtor. Don't forget to sign up to my newsletter down below for all things Bellingham. Of course, feel free to reach out to me if you need any help buying or selling a house. I would always love to help you out. And with that said, I'll see you in the next one.